Tonight, the United States Supreme Court has delivered a unanimous decision, one that is already being called historic by legal scholars and commentators across the nation. This landmark ruling will fundamentally reshape America's approach to gun laws, sending shockwaves through the legal and political landscape. In a rare and powerful 9-0 ruling, the justices have come together to establish a new, unified national framework for interpreting the Second Amendment, something many thought was impossible in today's divided climate. This decision redefines the delicate balance between individual gun rights and the need for public safety, with consequences that will touch every state, city, and community across the country. The world is watching closely as America's highest court speaks with one voice on a deeply divisive and emotional issue, drawing attention from governments and citizens worldwide. The case at the heart of this decision, United States versus Donovan, now sets a precedent that will ripple through legislatures, law enforcement agencies, and the courts for years to come. In the coming moments, we'll break down what this ruling means for you and your community, how it changes the legal landscape for both gun owners and advocates of reform, and why the timing of this decision matters now more than ever, as debates over gun rights and safety reach a fever pitch. We'll explore the decades of legal battles, passionate protests, and shifting public opinion that have led us to this pivotal moment in American history, and explain what the new community safety and individual rights standard actually means for lawmakers, law enforcement, and everyday citizens. This is about more than just laws. It's about people, their rights, their families, and their safety. From responsible gun owners to passionate advocates for reform, the stakes are deeply personal and profoundly important, touching lives in ways both seen and unseen. Let's dive into the story behind this historic moment and discover what it means for the future of America. The Supreme Court's unanimous decision marks a turning point in American law, introducing the Community Safety and Individual Rights Standard, a brand new test that will now apply to all gun laws across the country. This decision is set to reshape how courts, lawmakers, and citizens think about the balance between personal freedoms and collective security. Under this new framework, courts must recognize the fundamental individual right to bear arms for self-defense, a right protected by the Constitution. At the same time, they must also allow for regulations that are substantially related to public safety, ensuring that laws are not arbitrary but serve a real, evidence-based purpose. This replaces years of legal confusion and conflicting rulings with a single nationwide standard that every court must now follow, bringing much-needed clarity to a deeply divided issue. The ruling firmly rejects the idea that gun rights and public safety are mutually exclusive. Instead, it insists that both values can and must coexist, encouraging dialogue and compromise between opposing sides. Lawmakers now have a clear roadmap. They must respect the core right to bear arms, but any regulation must be backed up with real, credible evidence showing it actually improves public safety. This means more rigorous debate and higher standards for new laws. Dozens of pending cases in courts across the nation will be re-examined under this new test, shifting the debate from ideology to what actually works in practice, and forcing courts to look at the real-world impact of each law. Both sides, those supporting gun rights and those advocating for regulation, must now argue with facts and data, proving either a law's effectiveness in protecting the public or its infringement on core constitutional rights. The focus moves away from tradition and historical arguments alone, shifting toward modern, data-driven analysis and up-to-date research to guide decisions. The Supreme Court has handed the challenge back to lawmakers and lower courts, but this time with clear, detailed instructions on how to proceed, setting a new standard for future debates. This is the new reality for gun laws in America, a future where rights and safety are weighed together and every law must stand up to the highest level of scrutiny. To truly grasp today's landmark ruling, we need to look back at the long and complex history of American gun legislation. The story of gun rights and regulations in the United States is deeply intertwined with the nation's founding and its evolving legal landscape. For much of U.S. history, the Second Amendment was interpreted as being tied to state militias, not to individual gun ownership. Early Americans saw firearms as essential for collective defense, rather than personal use. Major federal gun laws began in 1934, when Congress passed the National Firearms Act to target weapons linked to organized crime and the violence of the Prohibition era. The 1968 Gun Control Act expanded federal oversight after a series of high-profile assassinations shocked the nation, including those of Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert F. Kennedy. But for decades, the Supreme Court didn't clarify whether the Second Amendment protected an individual's right to own guns, until 2008's District of Columbia v. Heller decision. In Heller, the court affirmed for the first time that Americans have a constitutional right to possess firearms for self-defense within their own homes, changing the legal landscape. 2 years later, McDonald v. Chicago extended this individual right to all states, making it clear that local governments were also bound by the Second Amendment. However, the court left open what limits on gun ownership were constitutional, leading to years of legal chaos, confusion, and conflicting lower court rulings across the country. Some courts made it nearly impossible to uphold gun laws, while others were more lenient, creating a patchwork of standards nationwide. This patchwork of decisions created uncertainty for lawmakers, law enforcement, and citizens, fueling ongoing litigation and debate. The Supreme Court's long silence on the issue set the stage for today's sweeping and highly anticipated decision. Now, for the first time, a single national standard will guide the nation's approach to gun laws, shaping the future of American gun rights and regulations. The case at the center is United States v. Donovan, involving Mark Donovan, a Colorado gun collector. Donovan was convicted for possessing advanced conversion kits that could increase a rifle's rate of fire. His lawyers argued these accessories were lawful and not inherently dangerous. The government countered that such devices were designed to skirt regulations and posed a public safety risk. Lower courts disagreed, creating a split that drew the Supreme Court's attention. During oral arguments, justices pressed both sides on the lack of a clear legal standard. The case became the perfect vehicle for the court to set a new unified test. Their questions signaled a desire for clarity and consistency in gun law. The court's unanimous opinion, authored by the Chief Justice, vacates the lower court's decision and introduces a new legal framework. The community safety and individual rights standard requires courts to first recognize the core right to self-defense. If a law burdens that right, the government must prove the regulation is substantially related to public safety. Lawmakers can't rely on good intentions. They need evidence and data. This standard is stricter than past approaches but more flexible than the toughest scrutiny. History and tradition matter, but modern realities count too. Legislatures can innovate, but must show their laws are effective and don't erase individual rights. The ruling sets a durable, evidence-based path for future gun legislation. Washington's response has been swift and surprising. President Biden called the ruling a historic step forward, praising its balance of rights and safety. Republican leaders welcomed the affirmation of gun rights, but noted the government's new burden to justify restrictions with facts. The decision shifts debate from ideology to effectiveness. Future laws will be judged on results, not rhetoric. Moderate lawmakers now have cover to support policies that work for both safety and rights. Activist groups on both sides are recalibrating. Gun rights advocates will challenge ineffective laws, while reformers must gather data to defend theirs. The political battlefield has changed. Evidence, not slogans, will drive the next chapter of the gun debate. The era of all-or-nothing arguments may be ending. The ruling's economic impact is immediate. Gun manufacturers saw market volatility, Uncertainty for some products, but a solid foundation for gun ownership. The new standard could spur innovation, with companies focusing on safety features and responsible use. Small businesses may benefit from a single national standard, reducing compliance headaches. But new, evidence-based laws could force retailers to adapt their inventory. Governments will need to invest in research to defend their laws, potentially leading to smarter public safety strategies. The entire ecosystem, from industry to public health, must now adapt to a data-driven future. The story is bigger than the gun industry. It's about how America approaches safety. Across the country, Americans are reacting with hope, anxiety, and cautious optimism. Gun rights advocates celebrate the high bar for government restrictions. Gun safety advocates worry about the burden of proving laws' effectiveness in court. Police chiefs hope for clearer, more consistent laws. The ruling forces communities to focus on practical solutions, not just abstract rights. The debate now centers on how to protect communities while respecting individual freedoms. Both sides must engage with evidence, not just ideology. The decision doesn't end the gun debate, but it changes its terms. The impact will be measured in new laws, court cases, and lives affected. Legal experts say the ruling's unanimity gives it lasting power. A 9-0 decision means future courts and lawmakers must respect this new standard. The key legal battleground will be whether regulations are substantially related to public safety. Lawmakers must now back up new laws with studies, statistics, and expert testimony. The court's approach honors both the text of the Second Amendment and the need for modern regulation. The ruling empowers today's generation to address gun violence with reason and evidence. This is not the end, but the start of a new era in American gun law. Expect a wave of court challenges and smarter, data-driven legislation. The Supreme Court has set the framework. Now it's up to lawmakers, judges, and the public to fill it in. Stay tuned as this story continues to unfold.